So I'm doing this RPM challenge thing, and this is going to be, I think, the sixth year I'm doing it. I haven't done it since 2015. That's a kind of long time, and I wanted to make a point to get back into making music this year. Um, and along with that, I decided that in 2011, when I did the Wasp album, which was an album that I wrote based on Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, which was actually before the movies and the soundtrack and all that cool stuff happened. Um, I decided that I wanted to make a soundtrack for it. So I haven't really done anything video-wise since Wasp. I made a couple music videos when Wasp Remix came out. So I thought maybe I could do this video thing again, mostly being inspired by my friend Allison, who did this 31 days of tarot thing. And I thought, well, there's only 28 days in February, so maybe I could do 28 days of RPM or something. I don't know. But I'm going to try to do some videos. And I'm going to give myself prompts, I guess. And the first one I'm going to do is what are sort of my top musical influences heading into this year's RPM. And I think this might be, like, if I decide to do this next year, this might be a really interesting thing to look back on, to see, like, where I'm at musically in terms of the things I'm listening to and the things that, like, I really am digging or getting a lot of inspiration from. The first artist is, I'm going to pronounce it, but it could also be pronounced chick chick chick, or really any three syllables put together. Chick 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 is a band that I was aware of and have been aware of for a very long time, and they sort of like filtered in and out of my various playlists. And I was, they're okay. This last year, 2019, when they released Wallop, it walloped me. Um, uh, the first couple songs I heard off of it just kind of blew me away, and then when the album came out, I literally was listening to it on repeat for at least a solid week, and it's still something that I listen to quite a bit of. They're sort of like a dance punk band, and I really dig that because that's sort of a direction that I appreciate. I really like dance music quite a bit. I also really like punk music quite a bit, and I like the juxtaposition between the two. Number two, um, I think this is probably a split. So it's Ellie Goulding and Aluna George, and I combine them because I often listen to them together. It's kind of like my happy music. It's the music that I put on to just be playing in the background and to have something upbeat that like keeps me moving and keeps my interest going. It's also kind of my sexy music. So like some people play Barry White, I go to Aluna George and or Ellie Goulding. My number three would be Churches. That's Churches with a V, obviously. Um, they're also, I kind of also consider them to be my happy music, even though they aren't in like particularly happy. Churches is sort of the happy end of the Sad Bastard music. I just kind of started listening to them more and more over the last year or so, and yeah, I dig them a lot. I like their style. I like the, again, sort of kind of poppy but kind of not, and kind of subversive in that way. And yeah, we'll go with it. So number four, I'm gonna scroll all the way down to the number 16 that's on my last 6 months, which is Grimes. But she's constantly something that is always something in the rotation in some incarnation or other. And she's the one that sort of introduced me to the whole concept of witch house as a genre. And the one thing that I really dig about her is that she does everything for all of her music. She records, she sings, she produces, she does the art. And that's something I can identify with because that's what I do too. And so the last one, but it's IMX, and just basically Chris Corner, just generally, because that would sort of combine IMX with Sneaker Pimps, which I kind of consider to be interchangeable to some degree, particularly the later Sneaker Pimps. That's my not happy music. That is the Sad Bastard music. But there's just a lot of really beautiful compositions that he does, and a lot of the stuff that he produces and makes reminds me why I like making music. And additional to that is the fact that it does come from like his, originally he was half of or a third of, depending on what point in their history you want to consider, part of Sneaker Pimps, and that was very much a dance, like electronica type of group. So to kind of have that full evolution of going from dance to something more introspective and dark is something that I can identify with as well. The final thing, the sort of honorable mention that I'll throw out there, is the genre as a whole of retrowave slash outrun. This is a genre that I discovered in the last year. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know what it was. I think I found it by accident through an artist named Perturbator about that. But I found that through some listicle of like most disturbing music videos or something. It was a sort of an animation, like a sort of an anime sort of style thing about cyborgs and their sort of struggle to deal with humanity and like their own humanity, even though they're not human. And a lot of Perturbator's music is, the stuff that's with lyrics sort of has that sort of vibe, and stuff without lyrics is definitely sort of a soundtrack for a similar sort of story. It's sort of very Blade Runner-y, and that led me down a rabbit hole of like stuff that's like that. So I would listen to like the Perturbator radio at some point, and it's basically all outrun stuff, which is this whole genre that celebrates the 80s soundtrack music that came out of the 80s, like video game soundtrack music, but also like movie soundtracks, particularly like cyberpunk and sci-fi type stuff like Blade Runner, Vangelis. And the name of the genre, Outrun, is based on the game Outrun, in which you could actually choose the soundtrack that you wanted to listen to while you were playing the game, which is the first game that let you do that. It was fascinating to me because it's like, I could do this. Like, this is a thing that I can totally, that I could not only like get into, but this is like, I think very often in electronic music you get caught up in this idea that you need to have like brand new patches, brand new sounds, brand new like manipulations of textures and things in order to be seen as original or not copying or not duplicative of somebody else. The whole point of Outrun is that it is duplicative. It is exactly like you're using. It's similar to 8-bit. But it's not just using like those 8-bit sounds. It's using just sounds that came from the 80s, the really rich synth pads and things that you would expect to see in an 80s sci-fi or cyberpunk type movie. Kung Fury, the movie that was kickstarted, that was sort of also celebrating those sorts of movies, has a soundtrack that is done by a fairly prominent retrowave or synthwave or outrun artist. And yeah, it's a whole just the celebration of just kind of geekery and like lo-fi sounds, and it makes me feel like like using stuff that like it doesn't matter if the patches are not unique or not, like that I didn't spend an hour trying to like build this particular sound, if it fits the thing that I'm trying to do, and I appreciate that. So that's my list of five-ish or so influences going into RPM 2020. Stay tuned, I guess, for more of these, hopefully, and leave comments below if you feel so inclined. I'd like to hear from other RPM musicians and see what you're listening to going into RPM, or what influences you're taking with you into the RPM challenge this year. All right, talk to you later.